What was your biggest miracle in your life, if you had one?
He could not have made that up. Powerful moments.
And then, have you ever doubted existence of God?
It made me stop and think, it's a crossroads. In this incredible darkness of this huge...
Why do I need to come to church? Why I can't pray just at home?
If you're looking for the perfect church, you'll never find it. God's given me my body, my life, to live it to the full. Because if people are in a work situation where it's difficult...
Hello everyone.
Hello everyone.
Welcome to my channel, Become an Orange, and today we are with Father Jude, St. Albans Catholic Church priest. And I will ask a few questions about the people's lives and the 10 aspects of their lives. How can that be related with our spirit, our belief in God? How long have you been priest for?
I was ordained on the 10th of March 1973. So that's 52 years, 52 and a half years, is it? Yeah, 52 and a half years, yes. I was ordained at my old school. I went to a boarding school, secondary school, only because my two big brothers, who were 10, 12 years older than me, they were born sort of shortly after the war, and our uncle thought it would be a great idea to get them some male company and male influences, because they didn't have much of that, but they're all kind of female teachers and stuff. And so he said it'd be nice if they went to this boarding school in Scotland, which was run by the Morris brothers, and it was non-profit making, and they were lovely. It was a day school as well. And so as I grew up as a wee boy, I always saw them with a lovely blue blazer, and I thought one day I'm wearing that blazer as well. So when I left a primary school at St Mary's in Burnley, I didn't go with the rest of them. They went to St Mary's College in Blackburn.
Yeah.
And so I went to Dumfries in Scotland. And by the time I left sixth form, and then I went on to the seminary, and at the end of the training, it was time to get ordained. And my big brother, the eldest one, had become a Morris brother. And my dad wasn't very well. And he said, well, rather than Jude going back to Burnley to be ordained, why doesn't he come back to his old school? Because they have a chapel. And then the boys at the school would see an old boy being ordained a priest. And the bishop in Salford said, that's fine. So he got the Bishop of Dumfries and Galloway to do the ordination on the 10th of March 1973.
Why do you become the priest? You had that feeling from inside, or what's?
I think I grew up in St Mary's Parish in Burnley, very similar to St Albans here in Blackburn. Yeah. I think that's why I've been so happy and content here, because they're very similar kind of parishes in demography, in size, church size, deep roots of two very old Catholic churches, parishes going back centuries, and sort of downtown kind of East Lancashire people. And when I grew up, there was 4 priests in a presbytery in St Mary's, and there was the old canon, like there usually was somewhere, like Doddery and whatever. But the curates were lovely fellas. They were nice guys, and I was an altar boy, and my mum and dad helped in church in different ways as well. So I was always part of the church.
So you've always been part of the church.
But they were nice guys, and they were kind, and they visited, and they looked after people in all sorts of ways. But they were ordinary guys. One of them, I always thought it was funny because he always got in his motorbike every other Saturday, and he had a little motorbike, and he went to watch Man United, and I thought, because I used to go and watch Burnley as a wee boy for the football, so I thought, well, it can't be that bad if he's going to watch the football on a Saturday. So they were nice guys, and I suppose as you kind of left primary school, didn't really think about anything what you're going to do. But then I went to secondary school, and it was a boarding school, and it was run by Morris Brothers, and they had all sorts of different things that you could do, sports and the rest of it. But they had we had a chaplain and a church there, and a chaplain, a priest who was a missionary guy. But he organised all sorts of stuff with Legion of Mary and trips, and so that continued, if you like, the sense of attachment to a church, but different, secondary school. And I suppose it was always at the back of my mind that, you know, that I'd sort of known priests who were good men. And then as time rolled by, I thought it would be all sorts of other things, wouldn't you, when you're sort of 16, 17, well, I'm going to be a brain surgeon, I'm going to play for England football or whatever. But gradually this niggling thing was sort of there about being a priest, you know, and it sort of stuck. And then when it got to sort of sixth form, I got a bit more serious about, you know, what to do. I thought, well, go to university and then be a teacher, or because I had 3 brothers and sisters who were teachers. But then sort of little thing about this priest thing kept bobbing up, wouldn't go away, a bit like a worm in my head. So I thought I'll give it a go.
What was your biggest miracle in your life, if you had one?
Well, 2. I'll go back to one of them. One of the reasons, going back to the last thing about becoming a priest, my brothers and sisters were 10, 12, 13 years older than me. And I never forget one time when I was about 14 in my summer holidays, my brother and his wife, my sister and her husband, decided they were going to go to Blackpool for the day. And they thought, they had 2 kids apiece, 2 little ones apiece. And they said, do you want to look after the bairns, you know, while we go and have a day at Blackpool? So I said, well, I'll go on then. And so they were a baby, and then the others were like 1.5, 2.5, 4, something like that. And they left me this lot with nappies and bottles and whatever and games. And when they came back eventually, all 4 of us, we were all fast asleep on the settee, a mess everywhere. And I kind of thought, well, if I become a priest, I won't have I won't have this lot. But on the other hand, as time rolled by, as I got to sort of sixth form, then, you know, those boys and girls were much older, you know, nephews and nieces, and age-wise kind of closer to some of them. And it made me think that, it gave me a strong thing about celibacy, and I'm not going to have in my child. But I never forget that moment when that lot were together, and I reflected. You reflect back on that one, that God never asks you to do something He wouldn't give you the strength to do. And if celibacy was what He was calling to, then that's fine. And I thought to myself, well, I'll always have a family, not my own personal one, but all these brothers and sisters and nephews and nieces, and I've got hundreds of them. Well, not hundreds, but loads and loads of them. And I'll have that sense of a family. I'll be dad to none, but father to everybody. And I think it stood me in great strength in the seminary when lots of the guys, people were leaving the seminary because they were thinking, well, I think I might rather have a wife than a parish priest, and left and stuff like that. But for me, in a sense, that was always there as a challenge. But I had a maturity, I think, about it all, because it had been in my head since I was 13. And I think that was a kind of a miracle for me in that sense. Other miracles, I suppose, with certainly going to Lourdes with the handicapped children's that we used to go with for 30 years. I went with taking a group of disabled children and the helpers, you know, no parents. We took the kiddies and we lots of meetings beforehand to ensure we could look after them from top to bottom, and we had all sorts of amazing moments with them at times when things happened, and we saw some of the things that they could do, and they were so determined. And but one or two, a little wee boy Jimmy, I did his funeral later on in life, and he couldn't tell a lie. He had a condition in his head, and it was straight. He wasn't autistic, but he couldn't tell a lie because he just said what he said and everything like that. And the last on the last night when we were going down to the grotto all together to say a little prayer, and so we all went down together to go to light some candles. And it was dark, and we said to Jim, right, come on, Jimmy, we'll say a little Hail Mary to all, to with Our Lady there. So I said, so I said a little prayer. He said, "Is that all right, Jimmy?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you fine?" He said, "Oh, I'm fine now, yeah." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, I just said to Our Lady, I said, good night, Our Lady," and she said, "You're welcome, Jimmy." And he could not have made that up. He was only about 6. He couldn't have played a game, of saying something that if he didn't truly believe it happened. And there were other times with that girl who was blind, and she said, "Oh, I've just and she described a statue, and it was pitch black in the corner, and she described it perfectly. And then she said, "Oh, it's gone now." There were little things like that in Lourdes, happened a lot. There were powerful moments to be a part of, in a place like Lourdes, where miracles aren't ones where people suddenly, a cancer disappears just out of the mouths of babes and sucklings. That Almighty God somehow or other says something to them, touches their little minds and hearts, and they come out with it, and you think, wow.
Yeah. And I believe the people who really believe in God with from all heart, they do see those miracles. And then, have you ever doubted existence of God?
I think the one time that it struck me more than any time was when it had be about halfway through the seminary, and we were at the seminary at Durham, at Ushaw, where we went. We started when a new regime started in the seminary. Prior to us going, the previous year and every year from going back as far as you want to go at Ushaw Seminary, it was the same thing. The lectures were in Latin, and regimented. Your life was conditioned by bells, the bells to waking up, bells for dinner, bells for tea, bells to tell you when to go to the toilet. It was unbelievable. And it suddenly, after the Second Vatican Council, and a whole new regime of all sorts of things came out from the Second Vatican Council, and one with the training of priests. And we were the first year when they sort of completely and utterly revamped the whole thing. And it was such a difference, where previously the fellas hardly ever got out of the seminary. I never got past the gates. You weren't allowed to go out of the gates of the seminary without getting permission from the vice president to go to the dentist, even in Durham. You think, oh, I'm 19, 20 years of age. You mean I've got to get permission, anyway, but so suddenly we were out. We went to schools, to prisons, to hospitals, to parishes, to do all sorts of stuff, and it was amazing. We were out of the place more than it. And me and a few of us, we went to a children's home in Durham, in Newcastle. We used to go there weekends, and we were a bit like a surrogate father to these kiddies in the children's homes. And I went to take them out for the day and take them to mass and all sorts of stuff like that. And it was somehow or other in the midst of that, in spite of what I've said about celibacy, one of the house mothers was there, and we got like a house on fire together. And after a bit, I thought to myself, this is more than just, this seems to be just more than just getting on well together, And at the time, a number of the fellas had left the seminary because they'd found somebody that, they decided it wasn't for them, and they wanted to go on. They thought they'd go and get married or whatever. And it made me stop and think, it's a crossroads. And that built up for a bit to the point where I didn't know my sort of edge from my feet really, and wondering what I was doing in the seminary if I was like feeling like this. Not specifically about this lady, this girl, this woman, it's only my age, whatever, but about the whole thing. Everything, it just seemed to open a big chasm, and it got to the point where I kind of wonder what on earth am I doing, not just in the seminary, but what am I doing, believing in, in sort of God? Because at the time, because the new regime in the seminary, they challenged everything. The professors there, you'd have massive discussions in small groups about God and you name it, whatever. And they challenge you, whatever you said. They say, "Why do you believe in God?" And you say something, and then they would not contradict it, but they would throw all sorts of stuff to say, "Oh, what about this, this, and this?" And it kind of shook the foundations of your faith, you know. Mm. But that was because I think what they were trying to do was because when you're there and you're sort of 20 or something like that, 21. And you've been brought up as a Catholic, just to accept what came from the priest and everything else, and then suddenly they were shooting holes in all that. And I think what they were trying to do was to remove bits of your beliefs that were kind of not flimsy and were not strong and not rooted and not really deeply thought out and not based on rock, if you like. And they sort of went for all those kind of things, and so you kind of, I was feeling that, is there a God? Because you've been challenged so much. But what they were trying to do was to get you to really dig deep to the real God who exists, not just something that you've kind of thought of a nice, pleasant little God that sits on a cloud and waves his wand and stuff. And I remember going one night, because I couldn't sleep, and this was just getting to. And then, this lassie I was talking about, that was all just like fat on a fire, really. And I remember going into the church, into the huge chapel at the seminary, and because all the benches were down the side and the altar was at the front. So when you knelt in church, you felt you looked across, because the benches were like that. Church was down, altar down there. So I sat at the top end where the rector would have stayed. So I was looking down. I could see the altar, because I thought, I want to see this. What's going on in this church? And I remember being there for a long, long time, and it was pitch black because it was the middle of the night. And I remember the only thing that was so light was a sanctuary lamp. And in the end, somehow or other, it seemed to strike me that in this incredible darkness of this huge building, a great old building, there was this tiny flickering light. And this little light lit up, in a way, the whole church. It didn't light it up, actually, but it was so strong, in a sense, that it overcame the darkness. And it made me think, well, you are there. Then I went back and went to sleep, and I was fine. And it felt so much different the following day. Bizarre.
Which is a good thing. But I think another thing why they have challenged you so much, it has helped you in the future.
Oh yeah.
When you become the priest, and the people coming to you and asking the probably similar questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a way.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, they wanted you to have a strong faith built on solid stuff, on solid theology, on solid grounding, on solid kind of philosophy and ethics and stuff, not just something that you've just seen as a good idea at the time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why have you chosen specifically Catholic Church? But I think you have answered this question because you brought up with it.
Yes, I was brought up with it, yeah, and And the more I've met over the years, people, other ministers of other religions and other faiths, I've always felt that there's something so deeply solid about our faith, rooted, if you like, in history, right the way back to the Lord, rooted through the structure of the church, from the Pope, the bishops, if you like, the priests, the people, gone through history, gone through so much turbulence, gone through so many terrible times in the history of the church where things have been at times gone so badly wrong. But always sort of in the worst times, a powerful group within the church has arisen, invariably religious orders, and have kind of reformed the church, and brought it back, and that you can kind of sense the deep presence of the Holy Spirit, slowly guiding his church and leading God's people onwards and upwards all the time, with a growth as well, I read something the other day, something about it, and it said, is there such thing as change? Because often people don't like change, but if growth is change. It's still the same, and it's you plant a seed, and it don't stay a seed all the time. It sprouts and it grows, so it changes, but it develops rather than changes. And the church has had to learn, grow and develop as time, history has come through, and when the things have happened in the world and science and the rest of it hasn't, disproved the church. Far from it. The church grows up with that and absorbs that, and it helps it to grow and blossom throughout the whole wide world.
But maybe it's time to change now again, and I will tell you the reason why I'm thinking that. Would you say now at church less people than it was used to be?
Sorry?
With the people who come into church on Sunday masses, is it less people coming than used to be? Was more people in the church before than now? What would you say?
Probably would say there's less. Though I remember reading about Bishop Cassatelli in 1905 or something like that, where he was berating the fact that there'd been such a lapsation from the church in his time as being a bishop. And you kind of think, oh. So it isn't something that's kind of new, and there can be 1,001 reasons for why at times there's a dip in the churches in the Western world. I was talking to a priest from the beginning of the week. I had a day or two break with some of my brother priests playing golf, and there was a priest. We went in Darlington, parish priest there. So the guys I was with, two of them knew him, and we went to his house. He said, "Come to my house on Monday, and I'll make some food." And he had a priest from Nepal with him, and he was talking about the church in Vietnam, where their seminaries and convents are packed to the rafters, as it is in some parts of the world, the church is so strong, and sometimes you think of Vietnam, you think of the trouble they've been through, the Viet Cong, and you kind of wonder how at times that history challenges that. We had a parish priest here called Bishop Hamlin in the 1920s to 30s here in this parish, and he led a 1,000 or two priests and nuns, about 1,000 priests and nuns, into Uganda at the end of the 1800s, after there'd been massacred by the king there, massacred Christian people, Catholics, Protestants, and then eventually he sort of, I think somebody must have massacred him, I don't know, and the church was almost slaughtered, but after about 10 or 15 years, the Mill Hill priest went in there with this bishop at the head, And when they got there, the church just blossomed and grew out of the blood of the martyrs. In absolute dire affliction and adversity and torment. It hadn't killed off the church at all, and it just blossomed after that, and eventually got poorly, and eventually he came back, and he came here as parish priest, and they used to love him when he tell his stories about what happened. So I think the church has always had that times where things are up and down and up and down in different parts of the world, and yeah, at the moment I would say that's very true, that it's had a kind of a dip, and yet somehow or other you kind of wonder about that you hear so much about, you know, people from other parts of the world that come into this country, you know, bringing the faith, and you wonder whether that will help to restore it a little bit more. We used to send missionaries abroad. Christians, Catholics from abroad are coming here, not as priests. Well, some of them are as priests as well, actually. But you wonder if that what they bring is they've seen the need for the faith, and you wonder if you're like with our YouTubers, that there's a pull amongst young people to kind of think, what is this world offering us at the moment?
What I think, that's my personal opinion, what I can see, a lot of young people, they online, they're on the phones. But if you will look on Christian priests, there is not many online.
Yeah.
So imagine the priests, every church in England, gonna go on TikTok, YouTube, and preach in there.
Yeah.
It could be a good idea because all the young people are there, and there is a demand. They just don't know. They may not even aware of it. You know, because they think completely different. They're not thinking as we're thinking. We're thinking we need to come to church, but they think it would be a good idea to have a priest in the TikTok. And it could be a very simple way that the priest just answer the questions of the people. You know, just go online, go on live, and then the people can text the question, and then the priest can answer the question. It could be as simple as that. And imagine if every church in UK gonna do that. So I believe the young people will come to church as well.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about this topic, I heard some people saying, why do I need to come to church? Why I can't pray just at home?
I've often had that. I preached about it a few weeks ago, mentioned it in my sermon, and somebody said that to me, and I said, "But that's fine." I said, "I'm glad you pray. I'm glad you pray at home, because we all have to pray at home, by the way, whether we come to church or whether we don't." And I said, "But especially if you're like on Sundays, you know, like keep holy the Sabbath day." You know, the day the Lord rose from the dead, you know, the centre of our faith, you know, that Jesus is with us. And on a Sunday, and I said, I hope that when you're at home on a Sunday that you're praying for at least half an hour. You know, you say you don't need to come to church, I can pray at home. I said, but I hope on a Sunday you're praying for at least half an hour. And then every day of the week, you've got, you know, a good 5-10 minutes morning.
Morning evening prayer.
And they used, every time I've said that to someone, they've looked at me as though I've got two heads, as if to say, oh, that much? Another saying, well, you say you pray, you know, you don't have to come to church because you're praying up, do you? I said, the point is that we are human beings, we are born to be with each other. The concept of the church, of the family, is that, you know, like a family that prays together, stays together, family that gathers around a table together and eats together, loves together. There's something about human beings is that we're born somehow to be with each other. That's at the very centre of our existence. God isn't one. God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. God is this incredible trinity of persons in love with one another. They're bonded together because of their relationship with each other. And the church is like that. And as soon as you sort of like disappear and go to one, who's guiding you? Who's supporting you? You're just like one. You're like the danger of Narcissus, who looked in a pond and fell in love with himself. We're not created like that. God, we are created the image and likeness of God. God is Trinity. God is the togetherness. And that's the whole centre of our faith, our prayer, that Jesus promised to be with us always to the end of time. And he fulfilled that promise at Mass. And that's the greatest way. He said, I'm with you, because the bread and the wine become him. He's there with us. And that is why we need to come to Mass. People say, well, I go to Mass because I have to. Well, Sunday obligation. I go to Mass because I want to. Well, that's even better. I want to come to church, to pray and the rest of it. Somebody once told me, the biggest reason to go to Mass is because I need to. That's different. I need to, because I'm human, I'm weak. I strive for the stars, and I fall in the mud. But it's there, if you like, at the heart of Mass, that with that community of self-made people, like we said again, if you're looking for the perfect church, you'll never find it, because
people.
Because if you joined it, it wouldn't be perfect anymore, because you're in it. So we come. That's why we start off at Mass beating our breasts, saying, "Forgive me, I'm a sinner." We start off like that. That's the honesty of human beings, and that's how we grow then together. Because Mass is all about being together. Our Father, we believe in God, not I. We, and the centre of it, of going to church, of coming to church, is because we need to be with each other, supporting each other, and knowing that Christ is with us to help us when we leave, to go in the peace of Christ, to be able to take him with us.
And the communion as well. That's what Jesus said on his Last Supper. Do this in memory of me. But you can't do that at home.
No. Yeah, it's the other half of it, of the promise, that to be with you always. And then he said to the apostles, do this in memory of me. So every time we have Mass, it fulfills that promise, and he's with us,
Yeah. Now we're moving on 10 aspects of our life. How important to believe in God and Jesus. It just helps us in our doubt times when it's difficult. It's very easy to believe in God when everything good, but try to believe in God on next of your son's coffin, or your child's coffin.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest challenge.
It is, and I think that's and the heart of our faith was that Jesus died on the cross. In his 30s. He came to strive to show us what God is like in kind of human form, almost, in a way of what kind of putting it, that he accepted. His heavenly Father didn't stop anything happening to him that was going to be hurtful or whatever, and he lived his life showing what God is like, and the powers of evil at times didn't want that, and they tried to block it out, as evil does. As the power of evil does, as people who are not right, who are not good, they try to obliterate goodness in any shape or form. We live in a world where, the other week, the gospel reading was Jesus saying, if only the good could be as organised and could be as hard-working in doing good as the bad people are, in being hard-working in being bad, because people who want to do the naughty things, the bad things, whatever they may be, they work out very, very well how to do that, how to cover their backsides, how to, to get away with what they're doing. And he was just wishing, if we could only be as determined as they are in doing good, as people who are trying to scam everybody and do whatever, the Epsteins of this world or whatever, and the cover-ups and the rest of it, and the blackmails and you name it, whatever. We have to, and that hit Jesus. They put him to death. They tried to obliterate him, and he rose from the dead. And somehow or other, that is at the centre of our faith too. That God isn't a magic wand sitting on a cloud, making sure that bad things don't happen, because invariably, nearly everything that does happen that's bad, there's some human element in it that's causing it, not God.
Free will. It's our free will.
So it's not God will not intervene. He's not a puppet master.
And what I've noticed, do the bad things, it's much easier than to do the good things.
Yeah.
When you do the bad things, you don't even think. You know, for example, you're driving on the road, somebody cut in front of you, you straight away shouting. It's easier to shout to somebody than just staying calm. You know, and that's in everyday's life. So it's always easier to shout, to get angry, than staying calm, to understand what other person feel, which is much more challenging and difficult.
Yeah.
How faith play in overcoming life biggest challenges. For example, like when our loved ones have a death, or maybe people have disabilities, and I think it's one of the biggest challenges when you have that faith, to keep that faith.
They call it the mystery of suffering. It's a mystery. You know, the mystery of God, and the mystery of suffering. You know, as we see it, kind of, if you like, and the suffering of Christ is a mystery. But it happened, and he shared that. He shared the worst pains that we can even
experience,
even to his own cruel death. So it's God is in it. He's in all this somehow or other. You know, even with people when they suffer the greatest tragedies, and often enough in adversity is when faith can be actually it can blossom, it can grow. Especially if there's somebody there that's kind of just with somebody, you know. Sometimes that's all you can be with people in their suffering, their pain. It's just being with them.
I remember when I was...
And that's showing God's love for them.
I remember when I was at a young age, I had a friend and he had Down syndrome. And when I was near him, it feels so different. That energy, you know, it's unbelievable. I don't know how does it feel to be next to the holy person, but that's how, for me, that's how it feels. You know, it feels so clean, so bright, unbelievable. Mental health. What is the relationship between faith and the mental well-being? How does faith help our mental well-being? I may answer from my point of view, as I feel. It gives me that confidence that whatever I do, it all will be fine. And even if it won't be fine, I still believe that it will be better for me because God has planned that way for me.
I just think...
So that's how it helps to me.
Just very briefly, I just think that, I believe that God is good. When we try to live it, I've seen so many times with people, and taking Holy Communion to someone who's in her 80s and she's got motor neuron disease. And the first thing, whenever I land to see her a couple of times a week, how are you, Father? Well, she can hardly speak. She can hardly say, how are you, Father? Hello, Father. No, just say, how are you? Asks about me. And you kind of think that you can't turn that on. You can't just suddenly turn that on. That's come from a lifetime of faith and going through lots of hard knocks, and I know she has done in her life. And that's what faith can do, because it's not based on sand, it's based on rock. It's based on a deep belief that God is good, and that somehow or other, no matter what happens in life, somebody will come, somebody will be there at the right time to say the right thing. Whatever it is, God comes to us in all sorts of different ways, and people, not necessarily sort of the priest, and people have felt that in their lives, that someone's always been there to lift them up, and their faith has strengthened them in that, because they've also seen that The cross is Jesus with his arms wide open saying, I love you this much. No matter what. Don't give in. Faith at times has got to be tough, as it was for him. But it's arms out all the time. And if you live your life with that like that, as I know she has done, then somehow or other you know you're loved. And if you're loved, it comes through to other people, and then other people react to that. And that will always come, and that gets you through the difficult times, because God will ensure that somebody will say something, be with you at the time. And so it works. That's one thing. Our faith works. And I see that so much in so many different people all over. And that's their mental health is so strong, is so strengthened by the fact that they know that they are loved by God, and that they return that love themselves. So they're not stuck in a well of self-pity or anything like that. They fight that. And they're reaching out to others all the time. And that's what faith does. It stops you from going inwards. It makes you go outwards. And if you go outwards to others, then you see their troubles, and then you look after them. And so any mental health, any worries that you have, they start to evaporate, because you're on a love thing going outwards. So at times, the mental health thing is sometimes that you wonder if it's because people are allowing their own troubles to drown in them, in a sense. And that they're just thinking of themselves, but then the danger is to become selfish rather than selfless.
Yeah. And it cultivates that as well in your head.
It's no good just to say, oh, I've got mental health issues. Well, look at them and look outwards. Look beyond yourself. Stop looking in the mirror.
Yeah. How important to look at ourselves on physical health as well,
Well,
after ourselves.
God's given us our bodies to look after. They're our bodies, but they're God-given. That's why that's why not to look after your own self, your own body, is a sin. Because you're not loving yourself. Jesus said, you must love God with all your heart and your soul, and your neighbour as yourself.
Yeah.
Love your neighbour as yourself, not more than yourself, but as yourself. In other words, we have to love ourselves. That's not selfish love. That's realising that God's given me my body, my life, to live it to the full, to double every talents I've got, and that means to look after myself. So if I don't, then I'm insulting God.
Yeah. So when we look after ourselves, for example, overeating, so that's sin as well.
Overeating,
being lazy.
Yeah.
How important is our environment? Our environment at the workplace, our environment in, let's say, in college, our friends, how that is important, because if you surrounded with people who are always swearing, maybe quite aggressive, for example, the workplace, sometimes you can't choose the workplace. You just go to work.
No.
And then if you have those type of people, how we should work with them, how we should behave in them.
You can only do your best in that sense, and it's at times, we will always be kind of at times feel the slightly odd one out, but I think to be able to do it in a way that's not sort of kind of over forceful, I don't know, but to be able to sort of to stop and not to sort of to fire back. I think when Jesus said, but you'll have to give witness to me in my name, and there are other times when you don't have to think of what to say. I will put words into your head, and I suppose that comes from kind of praying about it, because if people are in a work situation where it's difficult, then you need to pray about that. You need to come to church and pray about it, and ask God to help you in that, and He will. It's no good just thinking that I don't need to do anything about it just when something happens at work, that I'll just spout off, because then it's just me spouting off. But if you're kind of praying about it and thinking about it, God will help you to put the right words there. And at times it's the words that sort of aren't aggressive back to people, but just help you to stop and think, because other people in the office I work for, they'll hear that and they'll go away and think, he's right, that guy's an idiot. And that guy's been pretty awful, really. And that's how it works.
Yeah.
That's how it works. Goodness comes out, it touches other people, and it helps them to be able to then to sort of alter a workplace.
So they may back off a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got to love your enemy. You know, not hate them.
Yeah. The finance, how important to look after your finance, and also some people they carry a ladder, they earn more money, and they spend more money as well. So they're buying more expensive houses, more expensive cars, and so on.
Stuff.
Yes. Or maybe
You don't have too much stuff.
So some people may want to live in a little bit better area. The better area, I mean, a bit more quieter, you know, maybe out of the town.
I mean, to better oneself, Jesus never said that blessed are the poor, for there's the kingdom of heaven. He wasn't just talking. He wasn't talking about physical poverty, because the good Lord went round healing all sorts of people, blessing people who were blind, beggars, and stuff like that. In other words, he got rid the blind beggar who Timaeus, who had, was a blind beggar, and Jesus and healed him. He couldn't be a beggar anymore because he wasn't blind. He had to get up on his backside and go and start working, and and so he gave him dignity, and so Jesus was always trying to realise to lift us up in all sorts in every aspect of human life. He doesn't want us to be poor, and if that means then. But the other side of it is all that we're able to give more if we and then to be able to realise that there's a different kind of poverty here, there, and everywhere, and that our to grow in a to be, if you like, more like the Garden of Eden where everything was perfect. That's what God wants. He wants the world to be equal throughout the whole world, and so. For people to sort of, to improve their life, that's good, because that's what God wants us to do, to make better, whatever it is, to be better. But always with a view that what we have is benevolence, and that we're able to sort of give an awful lot more as well. But not to be selfish. What he said, you're in the world but not of it, We're in the world not of it. The world is acquisitive. The world is always trying to sell you stuff, and make you kind of want more and greed, and we have to kind of resist the sort of capitalistic kind of, thing that's money is God, and to be able to sort of to keep that in its place, and yet on the other hand to strive to improve. To grow out of a kind of a poverty for our families and the rest is what God wants of us, to do that, but so that in a way that we're able then to help others who are not as fortunate in whatever ways it is that allows people to kind of move up a bit. Yeah.
And the last question: hobbies. Is it important to have the hobbies? Is it important to have some spare time? It's spare time, not sitting on the phone and scrolling the phone, but the hobbies like go fishing, maybe football.
The good Lord every now and then in the Gospels, he's lovely. It says somewhere where there was so much coming and going that the apostles hadn't even time to eat, and Jesus said, "It's about time we went off," and he took them all to the seaside, and then it said, but everybody knew where he was going, and they got there on foot before they did on the boat. And then it says, and Jesus looked after the people and taught them at length, while the apostles sat on the beach, do a wee bit of fishing, cook themselves a bit of a dinner on the beach. So our Lord understood that sense of kind of time off, and that importance of time with God and with each other. He saw that. And he did that for the apostles a few times. So, and no qualms about where people think, well, you should be, on call, a priest, like 24 hours a day, non-stop.
So you do need a rest and take the time for yourself.
Well, because that's the only. Because then otherwise the mind you become almost weary. Because physically we age, we tire, and then if we get too tired, work. You see that with people who have jobs and they work so much, and they don't see much of their family, or they do when they come home. They're irritable, or they're trying to in a rat race, and in the end, the wife or the husband thinks, is this the man, the woman I married? What? The obsession, it's the work becomes the God. And Jesus didn't want that of his apostles either. He wanted to live and that sense of easing back from things in some respect of just sleep, time off, being able to talk and share the fun of life that Jesus obviously enjoyed, because he often went to Pharisees for food and drink and eating, because he said John the Baptist was a recluse and a weirdo, and he said the people accuse us of being gluttons and drunkards, because he obviously went enjoy food and the conversation, the crack that went with all that. So the sense of living a life that is normal is so important in life, and that part of normal means, like what Jesus said, stop doing this, we're going to have some time out. And so it's important that you have a break and a hobby. Steady
pace.
For me, it's like occasionally going to watch the Burnley football and a bit of golf, which I don't get as much of, but I had some golf this week, and it was lovely, and I played quite well, even with a hip which the doctor said needs to be replaced.
So how long have you been playing the golf?
I started playing golf when I was about 11.
Loads of experience.
Yes, I got down to a handicap of 4, so I was pretty good when I was 20 years old. Yeah, not that good now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.
God bless.